Well, you've consulted with the public, haven't you? What kind of response have you had?
Yes, we've held 10 public consultation meetings. We had to cancel 2 because of the bad weather, unfortunately. Apart from at Ashington, where there was over 250 people, the turnout of the general public was sadly quite small, but the weather was particularly bad. We've listened to people. The Ashington Leisure Centre, we were proposing to reduce the grant there. We've agreed to defer that for a year whilst we explore alternatives. Doesn't take away the problems there are at Ashington Leisure Centre. We've listened to people about potential closure of libraries and the tourist information centres, and we've come up with some review plans and some money to look at alternatives over the next 12 months. We've listened to people, the staff, about freezing of increments. We're not going to do that. We realised it was discriminatory. We were looking at all ways of saving money. It was an option. We've dropped it. We've also listened to people about green waste. Perhaps not the most top issue for some people, but a number of people looking for an improvement in the service. And whilst we can't go back to 12 months service, we're looking at perhaps having a bulky green waste collection service. So it's listening and just trying to respond in whatever way we can. With it being such a difficult budget, the potential is limited, but we're committed to continuing to provide top quality services for the people of Northumberland, despite the financial pressures. We particularly have heard from people that they want investment in roads, and we're looking to maintain and possibly increase that investment. They want us to continue to look after older people and vulnerable young children, and that investment is still there, and we want to maintain our commitment to listening to and responding to local community issues.
But your opposition members have said that inevitably frontline services will suffer as a consequence.
What we've sought to do in looking at our budget proposals is to limit the amount of impact on frontline services whilst addressing some of the more backroom services to make the council as lean a service as possible in the current circumstances, because we're still going through transformation. We're not there yet. We know that the opposition believe there's more money to be taken out of bureaucracy. We believe that will come over the next 2 or 3 years. We're not ready as a council. We're not mature enough yet to cope with drastic cuts at the centre.
What about redundancies then?
There will be redundancies. I'm hoping that because of our very strong approach to maintaining vacancies wherever possible, and that we've invited voluntary redundancies, the number of compulsory redundancies will be at a minimum. I can remind everybody that last year we got rid of 800 jobs. We only had 1.5 full-time equivalent redundancies, 2 people, and they by and large made themselves redundant because they couldn't accept the alternatives we offered them.
So what kind of numbers are you looking at now?
We don't have an exact figure, but we're talking possibly around 400 to 500 jobs lost. We know that a number of those are vacancies, and we've had over 200 people indicate an interest in taking voluntary redundancy.
So in 2 years you're losing 1,200 people. Surely that must impact on your services.
It does. It means that some of the very local based services that we would have liked to have seen, we've had to cut back on that we're delivering from more central points, but we believe that doesn't then affect the quality of the service. It just means that people aren't quite so local as we would have wanted them to be.
Well, let's look at some of the changes you've proposed. You talk about tighter controls on elderly care. Now everyone's concerned about the elderly, so what do you mean by tighter controls on elderly care?
What we have to look at is the way we deliver our services to older people. We've got well over 10,000 people who receive services from us. That is a range of services from half an hour a day to quite extensive support. We've got to make sure that is delivered in the most efficient and effective way. We have to make sure that we're not doing things we shouldn't be doing, that we're not contracted to do, and we need to make sure the assessment process has been thoroughly carried out. The Executive Director for Adult Care believes that by doing that thoroughly, we can make savings and still deliver the service. We're also going to make sure that the administration and the management work in a much more leaner and effective way.
Now, there's going to be a council tax rise. How do you think that's going to be received?
I'm sure it will be received with dismay and concern, but unfortunately we were considering a 2% rise in council tax. It now looks as if it will have to be 2.8% because the government's announced its intention to provide free personal care for the elderly people. We've already calculated that we will be 1.2 million short of the government from the government's grant, and we're having to increase council tax to cover that shortfall.
You're also putting up school meals?
The proposal is to put up school meals by 5p, be the first rise in school meals for 3 years. Cost of food has rocketed. We obviously employ the staff and they received wage rises over the last 3 years. So there comes a point where the service is quite considerably subsidised. We recognise there is a potential for a drop-off, but we want to maintain quality, and making sure the price is right is sometimes it means you have to make a small increase.
And you're looking at things like parking charges here for County Hall. You're looking at a £330,000 saving by stopping flower beds throughout the area. It sounds pretty drastic. You're clutching at little straws everywhere here.
If you don't attack's the wrong word perhaps, but if you don't address all the issues across the council services, and we provide 800 services in total, if you said, right, we won't touch that, we won't look at something else, you then have to impact drastically on a small number of services. Some people call it salami slicing. I wouldn't say it was salami slicing. What I would say is we've looked at those services which are the non-essential, those that don't impact on the most vulnerable, and we've said they can either bear a cut or they can bear an increase in charges. A lot of people have said for a long time that the staff at County Hall and members should pay for parking here. As far as flower beds, they're a nice thing to do, but they're not essential.
Would you say that leisure and arts are essential because you're having a 10% cut in grants there?
Leisure and arts are essential in that they meet an enormous amount of aspiration and pleasure for the people in Northumberland. But it is a harsh time, and we're asking those facilities to provide those services with a slightly leaner budget.
It's all very well having these proposals, but what happens if ultimately they're kicked into touch by the full council?
Clearly, the council as a whole has a responsibility to set a legal budget. On Friday, 29th of January, we will present our budget to the executive. The executive will, I'm sure, endorse that because it is a Liberal Democrat executive. We've been holding quite extensive discussions with both the Conservatives and the Labour group's leaders to try and find as much agreement as we possibly can. And I'm pleased to say there is a high level of agreement on what none of us want to do, but we all accept we have to do. There are some fundamental differences. Those discussions will carry on between now and the 10th of February when the Council should set a legal budget. I'm hopeful that as we did last year, we ultimately reached agreement on a compromised budget. I would hope that we reach it before 10 to 4 on the 10th of February. It was as close as that last year. We've spent many hours talking. We will go on talking because I'm sure the people of Northumberland want us to reach agreement and not have party political fights over what is a very important issue.